There is a darkness that follows every man, not behind him, but within. A quiet companion that never sleeps, never speaks first, but always watches. We spend most of our lives pretending it isn't there. We call it weakness. We call it sin. We call it the part of us that must be fixed. But Carl Jung called it the shadow, the hidden dimension of our psyche, where everything we deny, repress, or refuse to see still lives. The shadow doesn't vanish just because we ignore it. It waits. And the more we bury it, the more it shapes the world through us, silently, invisibly, irresistibly. You felt it before, in the sharp tone you used when you swore you were calm, in the envy you disguised as moral judgment, in the desire you condemned in others but secretly carried in your heart. That's the whisper of the unseen self, the part of you that refuses to die simply because you wish it would. We've been taught that the shadow hides evil, but that's only half the truth. The shadow hides everything we fear to admit, including our greatness, our vitality, our instinct, our unapologetic aliveness. We have mistaken repression for virtue. We wear masks of kindness that conceal our rage, and masks of confidence that conceal our fear. In this performance, we forget who we are. We forget that peace does not come from purity, but from wholeness. To face the shadow is not to become darker. It is to become real. Because only by walking through the night of the soul do we see the full spectrum of human light. There is a moment in every life when the outer world begins to fracture, when the old stories no longer fit and the self we've built feels like a stranger. That's when the shadow stirs, not to destroy us, but to wake us. It whispers through discomfort, through anger, through shame. You are not what you pretend to be, and you are more than what you fear. The truth is, the shadow doesn't hide evil. It hides power, and until you have the courage to meet it, you will mistake your own strength for darkness. This is the beginning of awakening, the moment when the mask cracks and something ancient within begins to remember itself. The question is not whether the shadow exists. The question is whether you will listen when it calls your name. We live in an age of light. Screens glow in our faces. Voices shout optimism through endless noise. We are told to stay positive, to manifest, to smile, as if the act of ignoring the darkness could erase it. But beneath the performance, there is exhaustion, a quiet, invisible fatigue that no amount of sleep or sunlight seems to cure. Because the soul doesn't tire from work, it tires from falseness, from holding back tears when it longs to weep, from nodding in agreement when it quietly screams no, from pretending to be whole while something essential lies buried. Carl Jung once wrote that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And we see it everywhere. We chase success, not because we desire it, but because failure terrifies us. We seek love, not because we are ready to give, but because we cannot bear our own emptiness. We build our identities like glass towers, fragile, gleaming, and terrified of the first stone that might reveal a crack. We repress what we fear, and in doing so, we create an inner war. A war between the person we show to the world and the one that still lives in the depths, raw, unpolished, alive. Denial is the first language of the shadow. It speaks softly through avoidance. I'm fine, we say, even as the heart trembles. I've moved on, we insist, even as memories pull us back into their orbit. We escape into distractions, endless scrolling, small talk, self-improvement. Anything to avoid that quiet room within where truth waits like a mirror we've been afraid to look into. Because when the light of awareness finally touches what we've hidden, it hurts. It burns like morning on tired eyes. It shows us the anger we called control, the jealousy we called justice, the pride we called strength. To look into that mirror is to see the fractured lines of our own soul, the parts we've disowned in order to survive. And yet, beneath the fear, something stirs. Something ancient, something that remembers what it means to be whole. You see, the shadow does not wish to harm you. It wishes to be seen. It is the part of you that refused to die when you silenced your truth. It's the part that survived humiliation, betrayal, and grief, the one that waited patiently for the day you'd stop pretending. But most people never reach that day. They build their entire lives around the avoidance of pain, and in doing so, they never meet their power. The world teaches us to polish, to filter, to hide, But the psyche doesn't obey those rules. It demands authenticity, and when ignored, it rebels through depression, addiction, resentment, apathy. Not punishments, but messages. Each symptom is a letter from the soul, pleading, "See me." To deny your shadow is to live half alive, a saint on the surface, a prisoner within. And the more you suppress, the more the shadow finds other ways to speak. Through projection, through sabotage, through fate itself. Until one day, the illusion cracks, the job collapses, the relationship ends, the identity shatters, and in the ruins, you finally face what you've been running from all along. That is the turning point. The moment the light of consciousness begins to flicker in the dark cave of the self. And though it feels like death, it's not destruction. It's the slow, painful unraveling of everything false. Because before the shadow can reveal its power, it must first burn away your masks. There comes a moment when you can no longer hide from yourself. When silence grows too loud and the old disguises, confidence, busyness, virtue, begin to feel like costumes. This is the hour of truth, the moment Jung called the confrontation with the shadow. It is not a pleasant meeting. The shadow does not greet you with warmth. It mirrors you with precision. It shows you every contradiction, every suppressed desire, every hidden motive you once denied. You will see the part of you that manipulates, that envies, that lusts, that resents. You will see your fear of insignificance, your hunger for control, your secret longing to be admired. At first, you will recoil, as if looking into a stranger's eyes. But that stranger is you, the one you abandoned to become acceptable, the one who bore your shame so you could remain clean, and the one who has been waiting, patiently, to be loved without condition. Jung taught that the shadow is not the enemy of light. It is the womb from which light is born. The darkness we fear is not malevolent. It is potential, unexpressed, unintegrated, unclaimed. In our refusal to face it, we lose access to the deeper reservoirs of life, instinct, creativity, will, and truth. When you begin to see the shadow clearly, something shifts. You stop asking, "How do I get rid of this?" and instead whisper, "What are you trying to show me?" You start to notice that your anger reveals where you've been silent too long. Your jealousy shows where your soul desires to grow. Your fear points toward what truly matters. The emotions you once called negative become sacred guides, maps drawn in pain that lead you home. To integrate the shadow is to reclaim your energy from the exile of denial. You stop wasting life maintaining the illusion of purity and begin to live from authenticity. You stop splitting yourself between good and bad and start seeing the entire spectrum as human. This is what Jung meant when he said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Enlightenment is not about floating above your flaws. It's about walking through your contradictions with your eyes open. The light you seek is hidden in the darkness you fear. Every disowned impulse contains a truth you've refused to embody. Every weakness hides a strength that's been distorted by shame. What we call evil within us often begins as unclaimed energy. The power to create, to assert, to feel that was once punished or misunderstood. A child scolded for anger grows into an adult afraid of their own boundaries. A child shamed for desire grows into an adult detached from passion. A child ignored for their dreams grows into an adult who calls others naive. The shadow holds these forgotten fragments and invites you to bring them back into the circle of your being. Integration is not a moral achievement. It is a reunion. It is saying to the most wounded parts of yourself, "I will not abandon you again." And from that compassion, transformation begins. Because when you face the shadow without judgment, something miraculous happens. It changes shape. The monster becomes a messenger. The darkness begins to shine. You realize that power was never something to be seized. It was something to be remembered. And it has been waiting all along behind the walls you built to protect yourself from pain. This is the revelation. The shadow doesn't hide evil. It hides your raw, unfiltered life force. The courage to speak truth, the fire to create, the strength to stand alone. It hides your authenticity beneath layers of politeness, your potential beneath layers of fear, your passion beneath the weight of shame. And the moment you stop fighting that darkness, you begin to feel something awaken. not the fragile light of pretense, but the steady glow of wholeness. It is then that you understand. To embrace the shadow is to embrace yourself, fully, fiercely, finally. Once you've seen the shadow, you cannot unsee it. It follows you into every conversation, every choice, every silence. It waits in the background, not to haunt, but to remind you that you are no longer allowed to live unconsciously. The process of integration begins quietly, not in some grand revelation, but in a simple act of honesty. You stop pretending to be better than you are. You stop demanding perfection from yourself or others. You start to tell the truth, not as confession, but as liberation. The work of the shadow is not about becoming pure, it's about becoming real. And reality is not gentle, but it's alive. Jung wrote that no tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. That is the law of transformation. To rise, you must descend into the soil of your being, into the dark matter where your pain, rage, and longing take root. You don't integrate your shadow by understanding it once. You integrate it by listening to it daily, by noticing your triggers without projecting them, by owning your envy before it becomes gossip, by admitting your fear before it becomes control. This is not weakness, it's discipline. To sit in awareness when every instinct urges you to flee, to feel jealousy without punishing yourself for it, to acknowledge desire without drowning in shame. That is how consciousness grows. Through humility, through presence, through compassion for your own contradictions. You begin to see that others are mirrors too. The people who irritate you reveal your disowned traits. The ones you admire show you what you secretly are capable of. Every encounter becomes a classroom. Every reaction, a teacher. This is how relationships transform. No longer built on projection. You complete me, you ruined me, but on clarity. You stop demanding others to carry what you refuse to face, and in that release, love becomes possible. Not dependency, not performance, but genuine seeing. Even leadership changes. When you are no longer hiding from your shadow, you stop needing to dominate others. You stop confusing control with strength. True authority arises from self-mastery, from knowing the dark within and choosing the light anyway. The integrated person is not perfect. They are whole. They walk with their contradictions instead of being dragged by them. They can hold anger without cruelty, power without corruption, vulnerability without collapse. The world needs such souls, not saints, but integrated humans. Because repressed shadows don't disappear. They accumulate in cultures, in institutions, in systems. What we refuse to face within ourselves, we recreate in the world outside. That is why wars repeat, why ideologies harden, why humanity keeps circling the same wounds under different flags. The collective shadow of mankind is nothing but the sum of individual denials. The only revolution that matters begins within. So how do you begin? Start by noticing what repels you. What do you judge harshly in others? That's where your shadow hides. Start by sitting in discomfort instead of escaping it. Name the emotion. Feel it fully. Ask it what it's trying to tell you. And when shame rises, as it will, meet it with curiosity, not contempt. The shadow transforms when seen through the eyes of understanding. Not reason, not control, but presence. Because presence is the one thing the unconscious cannot resist. Little by little, light seeps in. Not blinding light, but the soft glow of awareness. You find yourself less reactive, more grounded. You stop fighting what is. And in that acceptance, the energy once trapped in repression returns as power. Clear, calm, creative. This is not magic, it's the natural law of the psyche. What is rejected turns toxic. What is embraced becomes strength. The shadow doesn't disappear. It becomes an ally, a quiet source of intuition, creativity, and courage. And through that alliance, you become something rare in this world. A person who is no longer afraid of themselves. There comes a peace that does not depend on light, a calm that does not demand perfection. It arrives quietly, like dawn after a long night, when you stop trying to fix yourself and begin to simply be with yourself. That is the final gift of the shadow, not enlightenment as a blaze of glory, but as a gentle warmth that says, I am whole, even in my imperfection. When you've walked through your own darkness, you stop fearing the darkness of others. You recognize the same ache in their eyes, the same trembling beneath their armor. And compassion, real, grounded compassion, begins to grow. Not the pity of superiority, but the empathy of shared humanity. You no longer need to be flawless to be free. You simply need to be honest, because truth is the highest form of light. It doesn't blind, it reveals. Integration does not make life easier, it makes it real. You still feel loss, you still stumble, but now even your pain has meaning. It becomes a pulse within the greater rhythm of existence, a reminder that you are alive, awake, and connected. The shadow never leaves. It walks beside you now, not as an enemy, but as an ancient friend who keeps you grounded in humility. Whenever pride swells, it whispers. Whenever fear returns, it steadies you. It reminds you that light without shadow is illusion, and that peace without struggle is emptiness. The man who has met his shadow no longer seeks to be perfect, he seeks to be whole. And in that wholeness, he discovers the paradox of power, that the strength he chased through control was hidden all along in surrender. Carl Jung called this individuation, the slow, sacred process of becoming who you truly are. Not the self others expect, but the self that was always waiting beneath the noise. So when you look into the mirror now, you do not see a battlefield. You see a landscape, with valleys and storms, with sunlight and scars, and you understand that everything in you belongs to the same vast sky. The shadow never sought to destroy you. It sought to complete you. And when that realization settles deep into your bones, you will know the quiet truth Jung hinted at all along. The shadow doesn't hide evil, it hides power. And when you finally embrace it, you don't become brighter. You become whole.